So I said I'm a service delivery lead here in Australia, so I spend a lot of my time working with forest management team and trying to bring together and understand their silos of spatial and large volumes of data and try and bring it into a sort of a consolidated environment where we can start to sort of create these consolidated sort of action plans. I'm sure in this room, many of us confronted many of these problems. You know, you've had to deal with, shape files, which we know the limitations of shape files, single user editing, access databases, spreadsheets. You know, you've got to be able to manage your forest data across multiple regions and multiple stakeholders. I'm sure you've had inconsistency with your data. You've got attributing, like I know from personal experience, we've had eucalyptus species spelt 5-6 different ways, and then trying to repeat on that, causes inconsistency when you're trying to analyse your data. We know what the cost is. It's always increasing, maintenance fees, etc. And you're probably, I know from personal experience, you sort of start to build your own sort of land management, forest management system, and you feel like you never get there, or you've stuck with this legacy system and it's still not really operational. And the last one is about cybersecurity. And I'm sure you're all concerned, is our data protected? Now, I'm going to just park these questions because I'm sure these problems that we've all confronted these. And this is where I think where Stratus comes into play. And obviously Stratus is RemSoft's SaaS platform where we can actually bring together all that information into one single platform. And this Stratus platform is actually underpinned by the Esri technology with ArcGIS Enterprise. So from this single platform, we're able to analyse, we can plan, and we can actually start to visualise all our data in one environment. So when I look at Stratus, I break it into 6 core capabilities. And when I talk about capabilities, I talk about operational planning, resource management, to maintaining accurate inventory, and tracking KPIs across your activities, across your region. And by doing this, it gives the team full visibility of all their operations across the regions. Then on top of that, we're centralising all our data in one environment, all the spatials there, which then enables us to do advanced analytics and provides us with governance. So by doing this, organisations actually not only have the ability to make better decisions, but most importantly, they can trust the data that's behind these analytics, because there's nothing worse. You've been there at the end of the month, you're reporting on your plannable area, and it's different from the previous month, and you go, what's going on here? This with Stratus, you can get that consistency. So what are these? How do we meet these sort of 6 core capabilities? Well, Stratus has these modules, these 5 core modules. So let's dive deeper into these. So we've got our first one, which is the Spatial Edit Studio. So this is really just the GIS environment. So this gives the users the capability to do your spatial and your editing of your attributes, okay? So we can actually, when we're doing our spatial, we actually have topology capabilities within Stratus. So we're going to maintain that integrity of that spatial data, so we're not going to have overlaps and slivers. Or you can have some simple editing capabilities. The other editing tools we have is buffering, merging, splitting capabilities. We're able to import data using the spatial edit module. Then we move on to the operational planning module. This is where we can actually start to set up our scenarios and start to plan different activities across our operations. And we can either do that at a tactical, strategic, or an operational level. And then we can start to compare these different scenarios and work out what's the best one we should choose. So we've set that up. We've set up our operational units. Then we look at, okay, we've got these various activities that we want to do. And then you'll start to look at assigning resources. Now, them resources could be either equipment, material, staff, contractors, etc. So that's our resource management console. So now we've got our operation and we've got our activities, we've assigned resources, and we've got all these different activities in our draft. Now we're ready to move it into the planned and scheduled phase. That's where we switch across to the monitoring module. Now in this module, we're able to then start to track what's happening with that activity. So you might have a harvest activity that's in progress. You might have part of that activity that you'll split off and go 25% is completed. Another 10% is actually delayed because of a weather event. And you might have another 75% complete. So you'll be able to start measuring and calculating and reporting on the status of them different activities. Then we move on to the inventory module. This is where you've seen yesterday during the demo, where the team were able to demonstrate that we're able to import inventory events and then associate that with operational units. And also, I think Xander was able to demonstrate that within Stratus, he was able to create an inventory cruise and then share that to field maps out in the field, capture that data, sync that back in, link it to the inventory, and then associate to the operational units. So, and then underpinning all them modules, we have a settings module, which gives yourselves as administrators to be able to configure how Stratus is used. So we can set up our different data sources. We can set up our different types of activities. We could have different types of methods. So for example, you could have a harvest activity and then you have clear cut as a method. You can set up different types of prescriptions and phases. What I really like is the terminology. So for us, when I was configuring it for Australia, what we thought was a term that we would consider from a type of activity, we're able to reconfigure that and put Australian sort of terminology in that, in the look and feel of Stratus. We're able to set permissions, so you can set type of permissions for users so they don't have access to financial information if it's not part of their role. Okay, so you have that full capability. You can then set up your map layers. So if you want different symbology to be applied on one layer in one view, and then you can have a different symbology for that same layer in a different view. You've got all your standard scale dependency, zoom out rules in there as well. You then can configure your tables. So your tables, you can set up your views and your filters and your order of your fields and that, so you get that. So when they zoom into a particular activity, they click on that, the attribute table will pop up and they can get to see how you think they should be wanting to see that data. Also, there's analytics that you can configure, so your charts and your metric are all configurable in there. So what I'm going to walk you through here is a bit of a scenario, and it's sort of what the team did yesterday. So we've got our first column here, which is the blue column, which is our spatial edit studio. This is where we bring in, import our operational units. So these operational units could actually be your stands or your compartments, okay, and then you import them in. You've got your operational units in there. Then you determine what type of activity you want to do. For the example here, we've got a planned cruise activity, which is in the green section. So that's our operational module. We'll then move to our resource module and assign a resource to that activity or multiple resources. We're happy with that activity now. We're going to move it into the monitoring phase and we're going to schedule it as planned or in progress. And through that monitoring phase, we can then update the status as how that moves through that life cycle. And as you can see from yesterday, they actually went and run through this process where we imported inventory events into that activity. And then that goes and updates the op units with the new inventory. While that's happening, you could have multiple other activities happening across different operations across your sites. So for example, here we've got harvesting activity. We've gone through, assigned a resource, a contractor to that. We've moved it into the monitoring phase. And then one of the really cool features at Stratus is we can actually have this trigger that, for example, for this one, we've got that once that harvesting's finished, and it says completed, it'll auto trigger a new activity to start planning the regen for that site. So for other activities we have, like that I set up in Australia, once we get to a completed stage or actually a mid-stage within the harvest, it'll trigger off an audit activity, which then the team can actually consume out in the field. They go complete that harvest audit, and that syncs back into Stratus. So then we've got that process happening parallel with that harvest activity. What I'd like to show you here is just a standard sort of Stratus sort of data model. So we've got the top level, which is your tenant, your organisation, and then that's underpinned by the management units. Okay, management units, regional. It's up to you how you want to slice and dice your operational data. From that, then you build your operational units. Now, as I mentioned before, operational units could be just your compartments, or you actually might want to aggregate your operational units based on a combination of different attributes. So them attributes could be either the species, it could be the block number, the silver status. So you can aggregate that to make common operational units. And what that's doing, instead of having to select multiple coops in the one area, it's joined common operating units, and bang, you can select and create an activity on their multiple polygons. So now you've set up your operational units in each of the regions. Then you can go and associate your various activities to them operational units. And that's a one-to-many relationship. So you can see here, we've got many types of activities associated with that planted pine. And the beauty of that is now you can start to see the power of the reporting. We can start to report on what planned activities you've got, what your current activities, and what the past historical activities have been on that operational. And so you can then start to roll that up and start to report at right across your operational levels, at a region or multiple regions, and then right up to a management level. And then underpinning all that, we've got the ability to import your inventory data and then associate that with the operational units. So back to that original statement of all them business problems, and we spoke about that sort of single file issue and not having access to multiple users to be able to edit that data. Stratus is built on the Esri ArcGIS Enterprise platform. So what that does, it opens up the ability to multiple users to be able to edit that same data. We can start to have version control. And because we're using that enterprise geodatabase model, we can actually centralize our data now. We're not having different versions. It used to really frustrate me because I'll be working on one file and someone says, I've actually taken a copy of it and I'll put it onto my laptop and I've been working on that for the last 2 months, and I go, you're killing me here. So having it in that consolidated GIS geodatabase environment allows you to scale up as your data grows with your business needs. And as I mentioned before, I guess I've come from a strong metadata background. Standardizing your data is a big one for me. Because we've got our data in our geodatabase, we can start to take advantage of that geodatabase environment. We can set up domains and subtypes. We can enforce topology rules. We can do version management. And so what that's going to allow us to do is that we're going to have that confidence that when we do our analysis, we're going to make the right decisions because we've got the right data. Stratus is a SaaS sort of subscription model, so it can scale for your business needs. One of the benefits of Stratus is actually it's relatively simple to deploy, relatively quickly. So you'll actually start to benefit within the first 12 months. And I mentioned about cybersecurity. Stratus adopts the Microsoft and Esri cybersecurity best practices and is SOC 2 compliant. I know I spent a lot of time at Midway where I was previously on making sure that cybersecurity was our number one, because there was an incident in Australia not long ago where hackers got into one of the most government environment departments and hacked their Esri geodatabase environment. So I've adopted some of the best practices with Microsoft and Esri cybersecurity and enforced that on top of Stratus. And I could see when we first launched Stratus at Midway, within the first hour, we had 300 attacks trying to hit our database environment. So with this presentation, I'd like to leave with 3 takeaways. If I can find my last slide. Efficiency gains through standardization and consolidation of management of GIS data. And that goes back to the point, we're moving it into a geodatabase environment, okay? We're controlling how we collect our data. We're not allowing people to input their own data, free text. We're controlling the drop-down list through domains and subtypes. Number 2, not everyone in the organization has to have a desktop license anymore. They can use Stratus as a web client to do that. They've got their basic GIS tools there. I'm not saying that you have to completely get rid of it, because your GIS administrators, some power users, still going to have the need for an ArcGIS Pro or a heavier desktop client. But for the rest of the organization, Stratus should be able to meet their needs. And the final point is effective decision making. Because we're consolidating to one single platform, we're not having to go and chase and grab a shapefile over here and then link it to this spreadsheet. We've got it all in one place, and we can start to make decisions because we've got everything there in one place. So thank you for your time this morning. And I'd like to invite you later to go over to the booth and have a look at Stratus and come and see some of the new features, because there's some pretty cool things. I'm not too sure if you've got Stratus already, but there's some new cool features that are coming along, like being able to associate activities, not to fixed operational units, but you could be out in the field and you realize that, hey, I need to create an activity on this road, down the road here, because it's washed out. Then the team will be able to create them activities. Whereas at the moment, the model of Stratus is locked into operational units, but the future is looking pretty exciting on that. So thank you. And I'll hand over to Carlos.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for the presentation. It will be a challenge just to talk in 15 minutes or 20 minutes what we try to talk in 2-4 hours, but I will try. First, just to give you a context, we are a company that develop FMS for initially in South America, inside a big company there that was in that time Aracruz Cellulose and nowadays Suzano. And in 2001, so we always joke that we created the system in the better way to create the system, feeling the pain of the client and trying to solve together with them and put everything together for the market. So we started in 2001. Nowadays, of course, our main clients are on Brazil, but we are already being on South America, on Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Colombia, and other countries. In Europe, we had on Portugal and Spain. We have clients in Mozambique and China. And in North America, through AFM, they manage about 45 clients using our solution there too. So we had clients, we started on pulp and mill market, but after we bring the solution for other markets inside forests, like TMOs, like bioenergy, charcoal, and others. So we surf this growth of forests in Brazil, pick up the best practice that the clients use in there and try to share with all the clients. Here is just an overview about our clients who are using our solution. So we have, as I said, big players for vertical areas like pulp and mill paper companies, but pulp and paper companies. But we had for another TMOs and charcoal and so on. But going forward, I believe that when we start to talk with the clients, we had mainly 3 roles that are related or talk with us asking for something in the FMS. We have, of course, forest area, that the main concern is I need to do the right thing in the right time with the right amount and with all the traceability that I need to share with government, with auditing, and with so on. So these first questions are done in our operational system in an easy way, and I will show a little the concept. The second role that always look us, it's the controller of the company. Because when we are talking about FMS, we are not talking only with the operational part, but with the financial part too. And what I'm trying to say here, the controller normally want to know how I invested or how many money I put in that asset until I start to harvesting. When I start to harvesting, how I do the depletion, how I increase the cost per cubic meter at the end when we deliver on the mill yard or to deliver to a client that we sell wood. And the third one, it's IT, because IT, it's always together in this decision. And for IT, it's quite important to have compliance, to have cybersecurity, like Jason said, and to have a system that can give to the clients a package of the best practice that are being used in other clients too. That we are not selling only the system itself, but we normally selling a baseline how we will do the management of forests in the other clients, that each client we keep or we try to improve and bring a new solution and bring a new way to do things into the system. So we divide our system in different models. We try to divide them considering the forest chain. So we had, it's not one solution per each area, but the client can choose, depending of their reality, which models I want to have. For example, clients that are more vertical normally have more modules, but we had teams, for example, that only hire the GIS, forestry hash, the silviculture, because they manage the land and they sell the wood for other company, operate the wood and harvesting, for example. So the idea here is for the client can only hire what they need. And why we divide in this way too, to have an integrated process. One of the major things that we had in our system is if you change harvesting planning, this will impact in silviculture planning. So if I change my sequence of harvesting, the area or the land that will be free for silviculture will be delayed, for example. If we change that, what's the impact? If we change the silviculture planning, it will be impact directly in the nursery planning, because I need to know how many seedlings I need to prepare to be delivered in that amount of time to plant. So everything here is integrated. So we discussed a little yesterday in the fireside chat, for example, what's the impacts to have everything together, and the idea of the system is that it's trying to have or to decide anything into the forest, but knowing the impacts that one process will cause in another. Saying that, we had one of the major ideas that we had in the system was to standardize what needs to be done into the system, despite the process that we are controlling. So if you are talking about silviculture, if you are talking about harvesting, if you are talking about logistics, we'll have the same 4 blocks that we control in a very detailed way for each process. So the first one is the budget, and the budget works creating scenarios and having some technical list that can be created in a way that the system can explode this technical list in every operation that needs to be done into the field. And if you are talking about silviculture, for example, we can have a technical list that 30 days before the planting, I need to do a soil preparation. 30 days after the planting, I need to do a weed control. But this technical list can have a lot of variations. Like if I have a different slope, reading the characteristics of the land, this operation will be mechanized, this operation will be done in a manual way. Or if I'm expecting a material for soil preparation, I'm expecting 10 kilograms per hectare if the soil is this type, or 12 kilograms per hectare if the soil is this type. The system will read everything and will create what we call the schedule operations, or in other way, it's which activity with the material that needs to be put there, with the workforce that needs to be on that operation, and with the machinery that's necessary to be executed. So the system explodes everything and create all the schedule during the year, or during the next 2 years, 3 years. You can prepare the period that the system wants to explode that data for the users. After create the budget, we go to what we call the operation plan, that normally starts with the budget. But one thing that we know, that when we create a plan, something changes. So the idea of the operation plan is that each month you can work on that plan. You can assign the work to contractors or to own teams, and activities that you can't done in that month, for example, is automatically the rolling forecast happens. This activity will be forward for the next month. Or if you don't execute that activity, it's not necessary to execute that activity, the system or the user needs to justify for the system what's the reason that I didn't do this activity. Because normally, if I didn't do this activity in that month, or something will impact in the growth of the forest, for example. So it's a thing that is just to control always what was budget, what was planned, what was programmed, and what is the actual, what really happens, for you can have always this difference and analyze what happens. So going forward and faster, here we have the operation control. Is that okay? I already planned, I already assigned the work for a contractor or our own team, and this team needs to execute the work on the field. And this can be done in several ways. Can be done reporting by a web application, can be done by a mobile application, because every contractor or each team have their own mobile app to receive the work orders and to report, or can be received by telematics. So in harvesting, for example, we can receive all data about the production, about the machinery efficiency, and so on by telematics. And when we have that, we had a second part for quality and assurance. So we can configure a lot of surveys that, depending on the operation, the user needs to go to the field and check if the operation are done in a good way. Taking photos or answering a report to check if that operation will be approved or not. And at the end, we have the closing. This is much more related to payments to the contractors, or send data to the ERP to close that period and to put everything trigger on the ERP, considering the financial part. And I told a lot about ERP. And when I talk with ERP, I'm talking with SAP or Microsoft Dynamics, or the standard ERP that normally the company use for accountability, for payments, for everything. So we always say that our system is an operation ERP that can control the forest process itself. We have a layer upside that's for each process. We had a mobile application to support to use the data on the field, to report operation or to check information about operations. We have connections with third-party solutions that we call our ecosystem. For telematics, for image processing, we can receive this data. But the idea, it's the forester just need to know that, okay, I did a planting operation with that material, with that machine. The complex thing to send for the ERP, creating a production order, creating a material movement, moving the investment to a bioasset account, it's done automatically and it's triggered when I report the operation. So this idea here, to avoid the user need to know what I can need to do in the ERP, we done in automatically way. This is just an example, and I will don't be on a detail level here, but each operation in backgrounds, for example, have equipments that normally it's a cost center in the ERP, have the one workforce that's a cost center too, or can be executed by a third-party contractor that normally it's a contract on the ERP. Everything is on the closing, it's put together on an investment order that move to a fixed assets that represents biological asset accounts. And when we start to harvesting that area, all this investment order start to be depleted, and we create new materials for harvested wood, increasing costs of the harvesting operation. Roadside wood increase costs about forward operation, for example, and deliver wood that increase the cost about the logistics. So for each step of the forest chain, we can have, in a financial point of view, all the costs that were increased or that are put on the wood and this traceability. So this is normally a good thing for the controllers of the company to know what's happening and to be audited for certifications and so on, considering the financial part. It's in first view, it's complex, because if they need to do in a manual way, it's a lot of things. And this normally it's it's a challenge, because if we done manually, we have one thing in GIS data, we have one thing in forest solution, we have another thing in the ERP. And when try to cross everything, you have difference. So that's the idea, to have everything together, everything integrated, with triggering automatically this movement with the ERP. So that's the reason that we are working 25 years doing this and creating a baseline. How can we connect these three worlds in a way, in a simple way, to give to the client a baseline to do that. So I talk a lot about concept here, but just to share some look and feels about the about the system. So it's the look and feel. It's quite similar than Stratus too. We have a very strong GIS component, and the idea with this merge is pick up and integrate all the solutions to have all the good features that we have in Stratus connected with our FMS and vice versa. So, but the user can, for each process, this is like an example, installing some plots for inventory in one stand that can be done automatically or can be done manually. So the user always have the GIS part integrated with the business part. So it's quite user-friendly. And just to finalize here, as we had an integrated data too, we had a lot of reports into the system, but we provide to the client a data warehouse for the client can create their own dashboards considering all the data. Here is one example, crossing inventory data with the logistics data, how many by region, how many I expect wood from each region, and how many was transport from the field to the client, to the field to the mill, to the field to an intermediate depot, and how many wood are on the road sales, on the road side of the stands. So again, the system tries to pick up all this data, report it module by module, and give to the client an integrated platform for the client can cross this information and have a better decision. So thank you.